All right, welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt. This is my co-host Aaron, and it is with great remorse that I bring news to you. If you haven't already seen that, Charlie Kirk was shot dead at a rally in Utah. This was something that happened last week, probably 10 days ago, depending on when you're watching this podcast, and he is officially dead. And they have the shooter, and I guess the first thing we're going to do here, Darren, if you just want to go ahead and give your initial feelings about Charlie Kirk now that he's, gone, just however you want to frame it, just take a couple minutes and just say like your stance on Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, in the moment uh of the shooting, I just felt overwhelming sympathy, uh and I just felt yeah, like really strongly, more so than I thought I would. I was honestly really affected by Charlie's murder because uh he was so ubiquitous on social media and online in general. Every day I would scroll through Twitter and I would see at least something with about Kirk or from Charlie Kirk himself, on my feed. So, I mean, in that sense, he was pretty omnipresent in my mind, and I'm a big, watcher of Nick Fuentes. So, he's kind of Nick's arch nemesis in a way. So I was very well uh, acquainted with Charlie's beliefs, and I felt as though I had a good understanding of what he was all about. And on many things, I agreed with Charlie, but on really important issues that are, hot topics in the news right now, I certainly disagreed. So, Israel probably being the biggest example. Uh, and in that sense, I, as well as individuals I follow, were big critiques of Charlie Kirk, or critics, not critique. They were big critics of Charlie Kirk, and I shared this criticism of him. And at certain points, before his untimely demise, I would find myself getting very angry at Charlie Kirk for not, relenting on his seemingly slavish devotion to Israel. But I tell you, when he was shot, all antipathy or frustration I might have had was just immediately wiped away, and it was replaced with sympathy, sorrow, disbelief, honestly, that he was shot. Uh, it really seemed to just come out of nowhere. Why him? He doesn't even have, real political power. So I had mixed feelings about his beliefs, uh, but ultimately, as a guy, I think he was. I never met him, but he seemed like a pretty upstanding individual. I mean, he seemed to be a family man. Uh, a lot of people seemed to have a good relationship with him, and then even in some ways, perhaps a good parasocial relationship with him. People would meet him on college campuses, and they would almost call him their friend. Is a theme I saw quite a bit on Twitter and such. So I mean, he touched the lives of many, and he overall seemed like a good guy, a great guy actually, despite my criticisms. So I am truly sorry to see him go. Uh, I would have liked to see him be defeated through debate by the people I more align with. And I would have I never would have wished this upon him, and I really just can't even believe it happened. But how about you? What were your feelings about Charlie Kirk during his life? What impression? Uh, what was kind of your initial reaction from the assassination itself?
Well, just to give everyone in the audience a little bit of background, I have not always been the bleeding heart liberal that I currently am. In college, and Darren, you can vouch for this personally. I actually started a conservative chapter of Young Americans for Freedom at my local college, and I was the founder and the president for 2 years, and then it kind of dissolved. And it's obviously once I became more liberal, it just didn't make sense to stick with it. But and obviously, that's not a TPUSA organization, but they do a lot of collaboration. So I was very familiar with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, and I like Darren. I never met the man, obviously, but I am very aware of like his impact, especially on the college campus and with young people. And I didn't consider him one of the radical ones. I don't have ill will toward the guy. I don't agree with him really on anything, especially now. But like you said, as soon as he was shot, my initial reaction was just total horror and empathy. Like I could not believe that it was real. In a certain way, it didn't even hit me for a few days that he was actually dead. And I know that this isn't a therapy session, but it just felt so like the Twilight Zone. Like I was like, this isn't, you know, real. Like, and as soon as it finally did hit me, I was immediately just like, oh my gosh, this is real. And then I got down to the dumps, and again, this is about a dude that I don't even particularly like. I didn't even really like him, right? Like, me and him agree on nothing. We combat problems with totally different styles, and yet still there was this radical empathy I had, which, to be honest, I have that for most people, but it definitely could be that I just saw it everywhere and I was just constantly had to be hit over and over again with the footage. I don't know how much you've seen the footage of the assassination, but if you don't have to try very hard to find it. It is out there and it's everywhere. And I could not believe it. So I'm still, like I said, I don't particularly like the guy, especially some of the stuff he said. But whenever it happened, the first thought that hit my head was radical sympathy for the wife, the honestly America as a whole. Like I know that's cringy and whatnot, but that's just how I felt. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're so right. The footage was just brutal. I mean, I'd never. It was almost as if Hollywood wouldn't even replicate how gory it was in a cinematic uh, way because when you watch a movie, you see somebody get shot, you might see like a little blood spatter, but uh, I guess it's normally kept relatively tasteful, so uh, it's just not incredibly gory. But in real life, I suppose, especially where he was shot, it probably severed his carotid artery. I mean, the blood just gushed out of him like a river,
Right. It
and
was it was unbelievable, actually.
yeah, and I'd never, I've seen, gore videos, in my time on the internet. And most gore videos, you see kind of are, typically from a bit of a distance, and you just don't see the details uh, quite as closely. But I mean, there was a certain video with one of the attendees in the crowd was pretty close to him, and it was circulating all over the internet. And you see the bullet go in, you see the hole form, and then you just see the blood just gush out. It just insane. And I imagine he did not suffer because I can't. possibly fathom how you could be alive uh, after that for much longer. So
Yeah,
I
I mean,
suppose
once
that,
the blood pressure drops and your brain isn't getting enough oxygen, I mean, I'm sure he did not uh suffer long. So at least we can take some peace with that. So
yeah, I'm thinking that's probably why, or among many of the reasons why it just affected me so much, because seeing someone that, even if it was through a screen that you saw pretty much every day for the last few years, just die in such a brutal fashion, like that, it's just very, very shocking. I'll see, gore pictures of like, especially recently, dead Palestinians, and while it's shocking, it doesn't have that same effect on me. I think it's because I don't know them even though I didn't know Charlie on a personal level, it's like I don't really know anything about them, but I feel as though I knew uh, at least some stuff about Charlie. I knew him uh, in a way, through the screen. So I feel like, in a parasocial way almost, it was as though I did know him. So maybe that's why it was just so shocking to me. But
yeah, I completely agree. And I'll tell you what, we weren't the only ones. Twitter and all over social media, as well as the mainstream media. I mean, this has dominated the news and will continue to dominate the news until this trial is over, or at least till charges are brought. I think that's what we're waiting on next. If we want to get into it, unless there's more you wish to say. Um,
no, I think I've given my thoughts about the assassination and the man himself.
I gotcha. So just to give the audience a very, very brief breakdown of the shooting, basically, Charlie Kirk was shot by a 22-year-old kid from Utah, and the FBI did not capture him or find him. He actually turned himself in through his father and a mandated reporter who happened to be a minister at church, a Mormon church, I should say. And U.S. Marshals eventually picked him up and turned him over to the FBI. So, Darren, is there anything you want to say specifically about the shooter, or whether it's like the motives you think he may have, or and like what leads a guy to this? Just anything you want to say to like what you want to opine on.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to discuss here, especially about the shooter, because for a while, immediately after the shooting, the motivations were not exceptionally clear. Uh, I felt as though characterizing him as a decidedly left wing assailant was probably fair, even if they probably should have waited a little while. Trump goes on a some kind of I forget exactly which news show, but
Was it Fox and Friends?
it might have been, but yeah, he basically just states it as a fact that the shooter was left wing, and he I mean, from what has come out today, we're recording this on Monday, September 15th. I think he's probably 100% right that the shooter is of the left, but I mean, at that time, it was not quite clear. We've had other shootings in the recent past, just really this last year, from these O9A 764 types that were just, they would uh, they would have a whole mix of ideologies in their manifestos, or they would write ironic things on their guns or on their bullets. Just recently that shooting in oh gosh, I even forget which state, and I believe we covered it, but it was a transgender shooter in I think it was Minnesota. I want to say.
Was it the one that shot up a Catholic school?
Yeah, yeah. Was that Minnesota?
Is that what Minnesota or Wisconsin?
I'm thinking Wisconsin was a different one. I'm thinking that was Samantha Rupp now,
Okay,
but I could be wrong. They're all there's so many. Unfortunately, it's kind of all blending together.
right.
But
Minneapolis, Minneapolis. So you're right, Minnesota.
okay, cool. So with that in mind, especially those handful of shootings in the recent past, I think it would have been wise uh, and it would have been responsible to not immediately, blame it on one side and then kind of demagogue about it, even though he was. I mean, he's pretty. I mean, I think he's right. The shooter is certainly from the left, based off of information we've
Right.
seen since. But there, it was interesting. Well, here before I go on to what I was about to say, which was the kind of like narrative battle that persisted basically until today, when it was pretty much uh, obvious what this guy's politics were. But before I go into that narrative battle, what were your thoughts initially when you saw the shooting? Who did you think the perpetrator might have been?
Well, I was completely, open-minded to the fact that this could be a disres. I mean, Bill Maher said it best. Like this guy very well could have been a person who was to the right of Charlie Kirk and was angry at Charlie Kirk for not being far right enough. I was also open to the idea, and it looks even more and more clearly by the day that this person was of the left of some sorts. Now, to be clear, and I just want to be open to the audience, the FBI has not listed an official motive yet. So we should be open to that, and we should just keep that in mind. We're airing on a Monday, so please don't beat me in the head if you get to watch this show and there's a motive now. We should be patient. But I think that the complicated part of this kid is what radicalized him to do something. This is the part that I found that was the most interesting because he's from the deepest reds parts of rural Utah, right? He's from a middle class family. He's a Mormon. He attended church. A lot of people like his parents are deep red Republicans, so much so that his grandmother, right, went out there and said, no, they have to have the wrong guy. Like our whole family. Now she doesn't know. I mean, how much does your grandmother know about your politics, right? I'm not saying that.
Uh, yeah.
I'm not using that as an example to say that, oh, he's not mad or he's not left wing. He's got to be. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that like he was raised in that red of a household, right?
Oh,
And
certainly, certainly.
from all the reports that we got, he was smart. He wasn't the most social, but he was well liked. And he went to college for a semester to be an engineer, and he dropped out, and he was all online. So like the college didn't radicalize him. He was there less than 8 weeks. Like, and he's an
Oh yeah.
electrician. Like what radicalized this guy? Was it just he was terminally online? I mean, again, I'm not like for sure that's what it is, but that's what my gut seems to say. This dude was radically online in these Discord servers, 4chan, Reddit, something. Um, I mean, he was a hardcore gamer. Anyone who plays video games a bunch knows that they can have a pretty sick sense of humor sometimes, and this dude looks like a victim of the self in my opinion. Um, I mean, I will say because you mentioned it, and we will get to a further discussion about Trump and his like context to this shooting and his reaction. I thought what he said the day that Charlie Kirk was shot, like that address he gave, and I'll go ahead and I'll play that.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today. and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and three others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
That was deeply irresponsible, what he said, because we didn't even have the shooter in custody. We didn't have any of the chats. We didn't have any evidence that this dude was left wing and a radical left Democrat, and he just assumed that. And I think that that is at the very least irresponsible. And it's one of those things. He may be right. He's just right on accident, right? So
Yeah, I mean, on one level, there were indications the day of pretty much that the shooter was left wing based on what was inscribed on the bullets. It certainly was irresponsible of Trump. I did want to go through these, so I figured I'd this would be a good segue into it. Just so the audience kind of knows where we're coming from in terms of the shooter being left wing. Uh, so one of the bullets seemed to be inscribed with Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, which was an anti-fascist anthem, I guess, and
in Italy,
nearing the end of World War II in Italy. So obviously Mussolini's on his way out, and people were mad at him. So I guess that was their anthem. There was "Oh notices" or "Ooh notices bulge." What's this? So a lot of people were pretty perplexed by this, but I definitely recognized it immediately because
really.
uh, oh yeah, I was a big internet kid. Still am, I guess, although I'm not a kid anymore. This is actually a pretty old kind of meme. I mean, I'm sure it's obviously still used, but there was a pretty big furry presence on iFunny, and even non-furries used it in an ironic sense. I mean, it was just kind of a funny saying, but essentially, so if you see a sexy anthropomorphic fox with large breasts, but as you're dressing down this sexy anthropomorphic fox, you find that there's suddenly a bulge in their pants. Ooh, notices bulge. What's this? So you're receptive to the fact that this, ostensibly a female anthropomorphic fox might in fact be a she-male or a transsexual. So there were early reports of the bullets containing pro-trans, anti-fascist inscriptions, and I guess if any of them were pro-trans, it would be this one because it's basically at the very least a gay saying,
Oh,
and
for
then
sure.
the other inscription was "Hey fascist, catch." So I don't think that one needs any explaining. And then the last one was, "If you're reading this, you're gay." This is just seems to be like basic like irony,
Right.
silliness. There's no particular meme. I think you can really even link this to, or if there is, I'm not aware of it. But being ironically gay has been around for over well over a decade now, especially in internet culture. So it really could be from anything. Yeah, that one is more ambiguous. So there is some ambiguity there, uh, and people have extrapolated a lot from that very last one. The if you're reading this, you're gay one. But ultimately, I think it's just a silly throwaway one because that I can't really even think of a single meme that would link to.
Yeah, that engravings, they're also trying to attribute to the motive. They're also questioning this dude pretty intensively. He's not being cooperative from what I understand. Now they've got this dude dead to rights. I mean, they have the gun, they have DNA. According to Cash Patel, they have DNA on the gun and the towel, and they also have his footprints and his hand impressions and elbow impressions. So, gonna be hard for this dude to win this one. And he's gonna be facing federal and state charges. The death penalty is almost certainly gonna be pursued. I mean, they've got this dude on aggravated murder, weapons offenses, I'm sure. He destroyed a letter, so they're going to get him on obstruction of justice for sure. And there could be dozens more. We have, but they've got this dude. He will be held accountable for sure.
Oh, I'm certain. Yeah, they're gonna throw the book at him. Uh, and even today, in the latter half of the day, it seems that and now I guess we have to wait for this to be substantiated further, but I've seen reports today that he pretty much admitted it to a Discord chat 2 hours before his surrender. That he at least placed himself at the Utah Valley University uh, at the time of Charlie's killing. So yeah, I don't think there's any way he's getting out of it, and I highly doubt any even a dream team of lawyers could even get him away from the death penalty at this point. So
Well,
yeah, his future isn't looking bright.
especially with all the political pressure that is going to be put on both the governor and on the federal, which I guess that would be Pam Bondi, right? To like pursue the strictest punishments possible. So, which of course means the death penalty. So, um, yeah. Well, that's all I've got for the shooter like bio and motive. Unless there's more you'd like to add, I'm sure we can always circle back if you think of anything. But anything else you got?
Well, kind of to segue off the motive,
Mm-hmm.
immediate in the days following the shooting, uh, there was kind of like a narrative like battle over the motive.
Absolutely.
Uh, and there were kind of like three narratives. So let's kind of springboard onto that. Now, again, as of Monday, I think it's almost 100% certain that this guy was of the left. And, I don't say that to like
Me too.
score
No, no,
points.
me too. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because if he was right wing, I would admit that, that trying to, you know, us right wingers are not incapable of violence. I mean, we've certainly done it. Just look at the Buffalo shooter. That was obviously a right
Right.
winger.
Yeah. Yep.
But Buffalo, New York, that is. Uh, anyways,
That
so
was
there were
the
kind
just
of
really quick. Was that the Great Replacement one? Am I right?
yeah, he shot up like a supermarket full of black people,
Right.
and he
Okay.
killed
Okay.
like I want to say over like a dozen black people.
Oh yeah. No. 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 That's okay. I was thinking of the same one. I was just trying to remember which because we have so many nowadays. So
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a couple of years ago, I think. But yeah, in any case, I say all that just to say I'm being objective here. I mean, but there's certainly bad actors on both sides. But anyways, so narratives. so immediately after the shooting, there was a war by the different sides, the left, the right, and then factions within the right to control the narrative, control the uh, motivation of the shooter. On the left, they tried to kind of almost blame the right, or and even the Groypers, which are the followers of Nick Fuentes, and they used really spurious. Is that the word spurious? They made very dubious claims supporting this. One of them was one of the bullets, as we mentioned earlier, was inscribed with Bella Ciao. Well, I guess some Groyper made like a Spotify playlist of like 60 songs, 70 songs or something. And one of the songs on the playlist was Bella Ciao, among others. But the particular user that created this playlist only had like 5 followers. So this was incredibly dubious, and but nevertheless, I all over Reddit, because I saw it. People were in these subreddits on these posts of Charlie Kirk blaming the Groypers. So the misinformation campaign certainly was strong, and it did convince a good number of people, at least online. I don't know how many in real life kind of fell for it, but yeah. So the Groypers, that was what the left was blaming. They were blaming the people further to the right of Charlie Kirk, and now the conservatives were blaming the left wing, the radical leftists. I don't even think I need to go into that. We probably already have, but uh, and then on the right there was like the conspiracy angle, and I kind of call this like the Ian Carroll slash ZEI squirrel. Have you seen that Twitter account ZEI squirrel?
Uh-uh.
It has is like a Disney squirrel, and it like spews like vitriol, and uh, it's a very popular. It's actually a leftist account, but I saw it. They're fervently anti-Israel. But anyways, the Ian Carroll types on the right, and then the ZEI, uh, Israel derangement syndrome types on the left. They were saying that it could be an Israeli op to take out Charlie Kirk because he was going to finally turn on the Jews, and was going to support the freeing of the Gazans, I suppose. Now, obviously, I find this incredibly dubious. I don't think the Israelis would risk killing, honestly, a person that's been a total asset to them, over like a mild critique of Israeli government policy that he kind of made in his last few months of life. Uh, yeah, I just find it very silly, but I don't think many serious people are even considering that. But what say you? Is there any merit to any of these?
No, no. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was a little shocked, and I knew this would happen. And I'm sure, like most people watching this podcast, whenever the assassination happened, I was getting texts about, "Oh my God, did you see this? Oh my God, did you see this?" And then turns out probably 60% of it at least was fake, like completely just fabric, like just somebody just made it up, right? And this always happens when stuff like this happens. So I encouraged everyone in all my chats like, hey, let's be patient. Let's wait till we hear like directly from the FBI or from the governor's office or wherever, right? Because there was some crazy stuff. Like for example, this dude was supposedly a registered Republican. Turned out to be complete bullshit. This dude supposedly gave 200 and something dollars to Trump's campaign in 2020. It turned out to be completely bullshit. Not true. Not true at all. And I think that like when stuff like that happens, it's very easy for people who want to see things to see basically what they want to see specifically, and I'm going to police my own side here. Um, it was very easy for like Kyle Kalinske to see that or Emma Vigland to see that and poke fun at that and be like, aha, see, this was a Groyper. This was a far right Republican. We don't do this on the left, which is an asinine thing to say. And honestly, it's completely irresponsible journalism for them to say that because this dude, anyone with half a brain cell, could figure out that there's probably at least an 80% chance that a guy that killed Charlie Kirk was probably on the left, just playing the odds game, and
Yeah.
they had no evidence other than their evidence was literally stuff they saw on Twitter, and they ran with that, and they started saying like Kyle Kalinske is kind of doubling down right now. He's like the story doesn't make sense. And he's trying to defend the idea that this dude is a groyper. His evidence is that this dude shared a Pepe the Frog meme on Facebook in like 2016, and I'm like, dude, we have lost the plot here. First of all, this is just my opinion, just in general. You go ahead and you tell me what you think. This dude's ideology has very little for me to do with like the analysis. For the most part, I mean, listen, if it's one of those things where we see like a strong pattern increase, then okay, I understand we have to handle that. But it's very clear to me that here in America, we have a fair amount of both right wing people killing left wing people and left wing people killing right wing people in the name of political advancement. So,
Oh, certainly. And yeah, like I said earlier, no side has a monopoly on violence. However, the violence carried out by the different sides is different in character, I would say, and uh, I and that's not to demonize one side over the other. I'm just saying it is different. This is a trend I've noticed, and tell me if you agree or disagree. But uh, let me go ahead and rattle some things off. So when right wingers commit domestic, when they do domestic terrorism, they typically go for quantity over quality, let's say. And I don't want to say that in a glib way because, every innocent life taken away, I'm sure they were good people, but like I said earlier with the Buffalo shooter. So this guy is I just use him as an example. He's unquestionably right wing, and he goes to a supermarket. I forget the name of the chain, but he goes to a supermarket that is frequented by black people. It seems to be in a black neighborhood, and he rolls up to the front door and just starts unloading on them with a semi-automatic rifle. And I forget the kill count, but there were over a dozen black people that he killed. Now, this was a tragedy and it was in the news. Obviously, it was a terrible massacre, but at the same time, uh, and I don't say this to diminish their lives, but these were nobodies, so to speak. I mean, nobody knew their names until they died, and then their names were quickly forgotten because they were just regular, run of the mill people. And there have been other right wing shootings in the past that have a similar character to this. But so a great number of people, but the shooting itself kind of blends into the background because there's a bunch of shootings like that. But when a left winger commits violence or does an act of domestic terrorism, they seem to go for more quality over quantity, so to speak, or maybe symbolic targets. So, in the year before, at the tail end of 2024, we had the shooting of I believe his name was Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO,
By
by
Luigi
Luigi
Mangi. Yep.
Mangione.
Yep.
And so this was just one guy, and he was part of the healthcare insurance industry. Obviously, people took issue with that, but nevertheless, what he did, certainly did not warrant somebody going up behind him and shooting him in cold blood. But nevertheless, it was kind of a symbolic act against one guy who was to be taken as the representative of this supposedly evil industry. And then with this shooting of Charlie Kirk, uh, it was done. We don't know quite the motives just yet, but if we're going to speculate, it's because Charlie is a champion of the right. He represents the youthful movement of the right. He represents the right's growing uh, hold on the American public. He represents the anti-trans movement to a great extent, uh, and in that way, his death is felt far more than his death and Brian Thompson's death are felt more potently than the individual deaths of the poor souls killed by the guy in Buffalo or the black churchgoers that fell victim to Dylan Roof. I believe that, yeah, Dylan Roof was his name, the guy that shot up a black church
Mm-hmm.
many years ago. So there is a difference in the way left wingers and right wingers commit violence. That's just a trend I've noticed. I don't know the psychology behind it. To right wingers, maybe they see it as like a numbers game, like, oh, I'm going to take this many out and then we're going to be up on the scoreboard. But with left wingers, they seem to have a more uh, and I say this almost as a morbid compliment, I guess, but left wingers seem to have a more sophisticated understanding of what will rile the American public up and maybe even accomplish their goals, perhaps, you know, in a way.
Yeah, I view it just a little bit differently, but not too like I don't know if necessarily what you said contradicts what I'm saying, but generally speaking, I think that left wing violence is, there's a lot of data on this, and it's not just one data point, right? But pretty much every single time this gets studied by the FBI, by the ADL, by uh, as anyone who does crime statistics, basically they'll all tell you that the right, just in terms of pure quantity, it's not even close, right? Um, but left wing violence tends to be framed different. Like it's mostly property damage. Like think BLM. There actually wasn't too many murders due to the BLM riots, and even the ones that were there, we're not sure if it was politically motivated. It might be like somebody was trying to steal something from a shopkeeper. Shopkeeper shoots him, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but definitely a lot of like the property damages politically. So, for example, when they go in there and they burn down a precinct, I mean, there's no denying that that's Antifa, BLM. That's political based violence. It was an anti-cop movement, and they burnt down a police that's definitional, right? Now, it didn't kill anybody,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not necessarily written down with any injuries or fatalities, right? But it seems like the right wing seems more targeted on the actual like body count, right? So like how many I don't know if I'm even phrasing this the right way, but it seems like left wingers seem to go after like property, and then if it comes to it, like in freak circumstances, they will lash out at a person. And then on the right wing, they will almost always go after like a physical human being, you know. So
Oh, you're
And
certainly correct. And oh, go on, go on.
I was gonna say, and that's obviously not an absolute. Like, I'm not using that to say in this case that makes this dude a right winger. I'm just saying that, like, if we were to plot these people on a bar graph, you know what I mean? Like, it would obviously just show that left wing people, it's more property damage. Right wing people, it's more actual like injuries and fatalities. That's it.
Yeah, well, you're certainly right because some another aspect of left wing violence is the iconoclastic nature. So, just as I said earlier, the quality versus quantity or symbolic uh, victories or symbolic killings, you know, uh, in some ways, Brian Thompson, the healthcare CEO, and Charlie Kirk, more than just humans, they're also symbols. But like you said, and so by killing them, you're tearing down the symbol or what they represent and demoralizing the right. And then when you do property damage, or when you, and I have a great example. So when they take down the Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville, after the failed Unite the Right rally back in 2017, I believe is when that was.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it has to be 2017. After that, and then when the Robert E. Lee statue was summarily taken down and then melted down as well, uh, I mean, that's in a way almost more powerful and more potent than a killing in terms of the demoralization effect it'll have on the right, because that truly is a victory. Like, we are taking away the statue of your gods and or your heroes, and we are burning it down, and we are going to use uh
Yeah, it's the
the
demoralization of a culture. It's like almost like the subjugation of a heritage is what it was. What it sounds like you're describing to me.
oh yeah, yeah, all that to say the left is just far more sophisticated in the way they use terrorism. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's a morbid compliment, but I mean, really, I mean that's the distinguishing kind of factor in how left wingers versus right wingers commit terrorism.
Yeah. And definitely both sides things, although it's definitely in different contexts. Like a lot of people, for example, on the left will go on Twitter and they'll be like, "Haha, look at the total of fatalities from right wing terrorism versus left wing terrorism," and it's like, okay, but we're not really getting the full picture here. You know what I mean? Like I don't like. Don't get me wrong, it's not as bad because somebody didn't die, but if you go and you just burn down a police department, like how is that? How is that also not a fucking problem? How is that not society deteriorating? Right? Um,
Oh, certainly, and I do take issue with how some of those statistics are calculated, because a lot of the times the institution calculating it will be like the ADL, and so they'll kind of inflate the right wing numbers by including like gang violence within prisons committed by like white supremacists. I mean, that's certainly right wing violence, but it's not really of the same category as like a mass shooting, you know?
right. No, I agree, but all I'm telling you, and this is just for the audience as well, there's no way you're gonna score this that's gonna balance the scales to where the left wing people killed just as many as the right wing. There's just no way to do it. I mean, the ADL, I know that's probably the study you're referring to. They are bending over backwards not to count as many right wing things as they can in those numbers. Like I've seen them control for prisons. I've seen them control for Islamic terrorism, which, as you know, like most Islamists tend to be, uh, anti-female, anti-trans, anti-gay marriage, right? Which that all sounds conservative, but it doesn't really fit with the American right wing, right? Does that make sense? So like they exclude those, and so it's like even by doing all of that, it's still not even fucking close. So,
Oh yeah,
and it's
I
not
would
just
still
them, but like
imagine.
everybody will give you the roughly the same percentage of violence by each side.
Yeah, I would still imagine that right wingers commit more just from the news I see. Even though I do believe the news has a bias. I mean, I do believe the right wing commits a higher quantity, but yeah, but I do feel it's probably pedantic to even like for me to like hang up on it, but I do feel like some of these statistics are a tad uncharitably inflated, but I digress because it's really not
Sure.
that important.
Um, let me ask you this. Before we get well, I don't know. What would you rather go into next? Would you rather go into like how do we cool this down? How do we make things better? Or do you still want to talk about like I mean at some point I do want to discuss like the cancel culture aspect of this and the like just total humanity we're seeing online or even in person of people like literally celebrating the assassination of an American citizen.
Well, let's start with the cancel culture and what's the cause of it, and then we can
Sure. Do
finish
you
the episode off with like how we
Yeah, do you do
want
you
how we cool things down.
do you mind if I go first on the cancel culture aspect of it?
Oh, I don't mind at all. Go for it.
Yeah, so generally speaking, we're all aware of what the Overton window is, right? Where it's the left end and the right end of the amount of political tolerance we're going to have for certain views. Generally speaking, I don't think you should be fired for many things. To be honest with you, like you can be pro-choice, you can be, pro-Christian, you can be whatever. I don't think you should be fired for that unless it's like extremely relevant to your job. But if you're calling for the celebration or the justification of murder of an American citizen, I, I do not have a ton of sympathies for you when your company sees that or your employer sees that and they choose to fire you because you don't have the values that they're trying to express. I felt the same way about George Floyd. I felt the same way about the Gretchen Whitmer plot. I felt the same way about people who made fun of Nancy Pelosi's husband. I felt the same way about people who said that about the Trump assassination attempt, I should say. I've been pretty consistent on this. Like, if you're going to glorify, justify, celebrate murder, attempted murder, then I have very little sympathies. And honestly, I would argue for you being removed from employment till you've got to learn some sort of a lesson. There has to be a consequence for violating a very surface level social contract, in my opinion. So you may go ahead. And if you want to get into specifics, I'm cool with that. I just wanted to give my broad cancel culture position.
Well, I gotta say, I basically totally agree with what you just said. There were some particularly nasty videos and things said from people. There was quite a bit of it. I won't lie. There was quite a bit of it. I mean, if you
Oh yeah,
went on Facebook, even from Facebook or Instagram, you would see people, at least somebody or a handful of people from your hometown saying, basically being pretty nasty and, yeah, being, pro Charlie's killing. So it was definitely there, and it was a shockingly large number of people in my anecdotal experience. I don't know how much of the American public is truly that vile, but it was a shocking number of people. And for those people, especially ones that are, working as like nurses or working as school teachers, all I have to say is, yeah, you have to be fired because, and and there is a difference between
totally
that
agree.
and
Totally
cancel
agree.
culture because, if your employer found out that you were a porn star and you're a public facing member of the company. Like, let's say you're an executive of the company, very public facing. Uh, you meet with a lot of clients, but then it comes out that you're a porn star. Well, your employer has every right to terminate you if you're posting lewd pictures or videos of yourself online. Yeah, that is completely within the bounds. Uh, and on the right, even, obviously, I believe in free speech. If you're posting like memes of like Derek Chauvin, like kneeling on George Floyd, but in a way that is obviously like glorifying the death of George Floyd, even if you are not particularly sympathetic to George Floyd. I mean, obviously, if you're using your own name and face, your employer is not going to want to be linked to you. Your employer does have some freedom of association, so you're pretty much going to have to be fired. And yeah, especially if you're someone who works in the service of others, like a nurse or a school teacher. I mean, very few people would be comfortable with a school teacher instructing their children, if they found out that that school teacher had been posting gleeful reactions to Charlie Kirk's death, or posting memes of George Floyd burning in hell or something. So obviously there is a limit to what is socially acceptable, and that is distinct from cancel culture, because cancel culture at its height, we would have, you know, people digging up people's internet history and finding like a single instance of them using the N word in a non threatening way, like maybe singing a rap song, and then the N word came up, and then they sang along, and then they would use that as a justification to get someone fired. Well, that's obviously a very forgivable expense. If any charitable person would say, "Hey, that's really just not a big deal. You shouldn't be fired for that." Nevertheless, during the height of cancel culture, people were getting fired for similar offenses. But that's the distinction. Cancel culture. This is not cancel culture when someone gleefully celebrating Charlie Kirk's death is let go by their employer. Their employer does not have to employ that person. With
No,
that being
I
said,
complete. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, one last thing, just so I'm totally charitable to the left. I have seen some instances of people saying, "Well, I disagree with Charlie Kirk, and I don't, I find this particular view he held to be disgusting, quite frankly, but I condemn political violence." And yet, I do see people who have made basically the same statements as that be brought be posted, or not really doxxed, but brought forth for cancellation. And I would say that's really not fair. That's kind of, that's acceptable, even though it might be a little tasteless the way they said it right after his death. Even still, I mean, there is a line, and I don't think those posts necessarily cross it. Uh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's my thoughts. So I'm in agreement.
yeah, I pretty much completely agree. Especially there at the end, like and I didn't want to focus on that because mostly I think those are fringe issues or fringe ones that are going to get sorted out, and they're going to be like fully restored to their job. Like if all you posted was like, "Hey, I didn't like a single thing about this guy, but I don't want to see this happen to anybody," then I mean, that's totally acceptable in my opinion. Like, you don't have to, like, and I'm one of those people. Like, I don't agree with hardly anything the dude said, other than the fact that he's a Christian. I mean, that's basically all we have in common. But I would never use anything he said as like a retort, that like he kind of had it coming. And that to me is whenever we step over a line and you're like, okay, now you can't have your job. Especially I think the teacher and the nurse example are good, cops are good, because like you're in the like, what if you have, Christian conservative children in your classroom in high school, right? Like, how are you supposed to teach over them if you think that their background is like totally worth, killing over, right? It's that obvious to me that we can't allow this. So, um, obviously, it just can't be allowed. There has to be some, and that's not freedom, like a violation of freedom of speech, because freedom of speech is there for so that way nobody goes to jail, and I'm not ever arguing for that, but I'm not arguing for freedom of consequences, which is that, hey, you violated a very, very surface level social contract. The minimum thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to have to lose your job. And it might be a little bit harder to find employment for a while, but hopefully that'll get the lesson across the hard way that there has to be some human empathy going on, okay? But
Oh yes,
that's
certainly.
that's
And
pretty. Go ahead.
oh, my bad. Sorry. I just, the only reason that so many of these left wingers felt so emboldened to say these really vile things with their, full name and face on, Facebook or TikTok or wherever is that up until now, the right has not engaged in any mass cancellation, really. They've done little cancellation campaigns I can think of in the past, but this is really something unique. I've not seen the right really go after people like this, quite like this before. So I do think this is a wake up call for the left. Like, hey, there are things that you actually cannot say and be, there are things that y'all say that are just not socially acceptable, that are outside the norm. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I completely agree.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
I just think it was a good wake up call for them.
Awesome. Well, let's get into some basic level, like how do we quit this stuff and how do we make stuff better? So I'll leave that open to you because I'm sure this is going to be the biggest area where we disagree. Because yeah, I'll just leave it at that and we'll figure that out. So like, what do we need to do to better this?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I want to reduce tensions as quick as possible, but how do we go about it? To me, from my perspective, I do feel in this moment it is far more incumbent upon the left to tone down rhetoric. But and I think the leaders of the left. So obviously, the day of, I saw Obama, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders. I saw them all condemn it. So they all did a great job, I think. I really saw nothing offensive from them. I thought what they said was very responsible. It's more of this certain more radical element within their base. I think it's just incumbent upon that element to, kind of calm it down a little. And I think ultimately these cancellations, even though maybe on its surface you might think it would increase tensions to do these cancellations, I think these cancellations being done by the right are ultimately in service of a higher good. When left wingers are able to see, oh, there are actually major social consequences if I use this vile rhetoric in public with my full name and face, then I will no longer engage in such rhetoric and I will bring the tone down, even if I don't do it out of the goodness of my heart, but I do it because of the consequences. Up until now, I would argue that left wingers have not felt a great deal of consequences for words they've said, uh, unless you count pro Palestinian left wingers, in which they have been unfairly persecuted. But other than them, I really don't think the left wingers have quite felt consequences for their words yet. So if the right can make a good example out of the particularly vile people that have been saying these things as of late, then I think that will actually reduce tensions quite a bit because it will give the right a victory, so they'll calm down. You know, they'll feel like they got back a little. It'll tone down the rhetoric from the left, so that will, in turn, bring down the temperature. So it'll be a cycle that I think will ultimately be for the good. I think just holding the left to account and having the left, do their part to reduce tensions, be a little less glib. Uh, I think that would be for the best. And inevitably, when, not if, but when the somebody on the right does something terrible in the future, it'll be incumbent upon the right to, say, hey, we disavow this guy. Hopefully, nobody cheers on whatever terrible act is committed in the future. You know, we hope that such a thing doesn't happen, but in all likelihood, it will. But
Yeah.
what say you?
I don't disagree with a whole lot. You tell me if you feel like what I'm saying is like totally counter to what you're saying, okay? I think that you were right about the Democratic leaders doing at least their part, right? But I think the problem is that leaders are no longer just politicians, right? So I know that we elect politicians and we want to put them right up there as like the leaders that are like steering society, right? Unfortunately, those are not the only leaders we have, especially in the age of the internet. This is unfortunately podcasters. This is, and when I say leader, I mean people that can influence behavior and inspire action, right? Like those types of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do think generally speaking, you can have like this disciplinary action where like the right polices the left and then the left polices the right. I feel like at best case scenario that is a marginal way to deal with like a change of behavior. I feel like the most effective way is to have your leaders on your own side step up and take accountability for their own. So for just as an example, right? Like the Democratic leaders and then the Democratic influencers who I would argue did not do their part in this case, if they were to step up and police their own base and be like, "Hey, like we don't want you in our movement if you're glorifying this. This is not who we are. We're supposed to be the party of empathy. This is not what we do. I don't want you in my movement." Right? I think that would be significantly more effective and than if the right were canceling these people. Now, I'm not against the right canceling these people. They have every right to do that. I'm just saying that like what would be the most effective is if each side policed their own. I think the problem we have here is that like we have one side who is at least trying to cool down the temperatures, like you said, all those Democratic lawmakers, right? But I think the other side, specifically the political leaders, basically bending over backwards to blame just the radical left for political violence. Trump specifically has taken no accountability, and he's only been given 1,000 chances to do so. I mean, on Fox and Friends, I'll go ahead and play that clip.
And we're going to look into that.
What do we do about our country with that? Because we have radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime.
But basically, the hostess tried to give him 1,000 opportunities to condemn political violence on the right, and he wouldn't do it. he even defends not doing it. And I think that that's so problematic. We're basically trying to solve a nationwide problem with our hands tied behind our back and our ankles handcuffed together. I mean, this is not going to solve anything. I say all that just to basically, and it's not just Trump. Obviously, like Matt Walsh has said some gross things over the next past few days, and for Matt Walsh, that's a tough bar. And I think that we have one side who is at least trying, and I'm not specifically the Democratic influencers or not, but the politicians at least are. But like I said, is Trump the guy that's going to unify the country around this and just like, I mean, step everybody back. Let's calm down. This is a problem, right? I mean, be honest with me. Do you think that he's even capable of saying that, hey, we got to come together. This is a problem on all sides?
Uh, Honestly, I don't know that he is. To me, in our psychoanalysis of Trump, which we've done over this podcast, many episodes of this podcast, I think we've both determined that Trump is just totally unwilling to show any sign of weakness, which can be a good thing in certain circumstances, but obviously might not be the best right now. I do kind of have two things in my mind, though. This is where I differ from you some. I don't think it's as incumbent upon Trump to not express, some righteous indignation.
He's the
But
president.
a right-wing president, and Charlie Kirk was a close associate of his, so I don't think it's as incumbent upon him to bring the temperature down as it is the people on the left. There is some disagreement there.
Dude, you gotta. Sorry,
With
I don't
that
mean.
being said,
Go
I
ahead.
think he should. I mean, ultimately, I think he should, do his best to, keep things chill. But I do think he does reserve the right to some righteous indignation, ultimately.
No, dude, I totally disagree. I mean, you got to think like this is like the standard playbook for a president in the United States. It's some tragedy happens, even if it's on your side, even if the other side fucking did it, right? You're supposed to, do some sort of eulogy, say that your thoughts and prayers are with them and say that, hey, this political violence is no longer acceptable. We have to move forward or this is killing us, right? That is I mean, listen, I'll go ahead and I'll play the clip too of like what Biden said when Trump was shot.
While we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors. We're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're our fellow Americans. We must stand together. Yesterday's shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania calls on all of us to take a step back, take stock of where we are, how we go forward from here. Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured. I spoke with him last night. I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. We should all hold his family and all those injured in our prayers. Earlier today, I spoke about an ongoing investigation. We do not know the motive of the shooter yet. We don't know his opinions or affiliations. We don't know whether he had help or support or if he communicated with anyone else. Law enforcement professionals, as I speak, are investigating those questions. Tonight, I want to speak to what we do know. A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. We've traveled before throughout our history. Violence has never been the answer, whether it's with members of Congress of both parties being targeted and shot, or a violent mob attacking the Capitol on January 6th, or a brutal attack on the spouse of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, or information and intimidation on election officials, or the kidnapping plot against the sitting governor, or an attempted assassination on Donald Trump. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, for any violence ever.
And it's textbook, right? It's hey, here's what happened. Here's like we don't know the motive yet, but this is unacceptable, right? This is not allowed. This we cannot allow this, or our society is going to deteriorate. And I think as much influence as Trump has on the right, I think that it is a moral duty of him to basically speak out against the violence just in general. Just like, hey, I knew this guy really well. He's a victim of violence, right? But it's not acceptable for either side. So, I don't know. I don't know how you can say he has no, just because what he knew Charlie Kirk and what he now has a right, or he now has the right not to condemn it on all sides. He now has a right to blame the left and get us. I mean, that's just going to leave us in a worse place, is it not? Is Trump's rhetoric the past few days only going to make us worse, or do you say that it makes us better?
No, no, hold on. I think I probably could. Here, let me explain it again. So, like, again, okay, so like with the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, uh, I don't, obviously at that point in time, Trump was the victim. So I didn't think it was as incumbent upon Trump as it was other leaders, such as Biden, to, bring uh, you know, to bring the heat down, because ultimately he was the victim in that. We don't know Thomas Crook's his exact motivations. It's pretty opaque. We can probably guess he was left wing, but we don't know for sure. So to be fair,
You say we can
uh,
guess he was left wing?
Thomas Matthew Crooks,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, we can guess who. I mean, he shot at Trump, so
right. But I don't know. We do not know that. Just as a statement of fact. A lot of evidence points to that dude specifically being yeah. Never mind. Never mind. It's a mute point anyway. Go ahead.
well. Anyways, I don't know that. I guess like on January 6th, that would have been a time where it was more incumbent upon Trump to do better, be responsible, use responsible rhetoric, because in that case he was the victimizer. But in
Right,
a
and
way,
we all know he was very presidential. He was very like self-reflecting and disavowing the violence and so much so he actually pardoned them because he was just so forgiving and so graceful, right? I mean, give me a
well,
break.
okay,
This
he
dude
wasn't
pardons
okay.
victims or perpetrators of political violence.
Okay, he wasn't graceful. He was not graceful, but he should have been. And now, in this instance, when even though Trump was not directly the victim of the assassin's bullet, he's more so in the victim camp. He's victim adjacent. So I do feel as though he has a right to righteous indignation, just as he did after the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, just as the left had
No,
a
dude,
right to a level of righteous indignation after January 6th. And it was more incumbent upon the right after January 6th to bring the temperature down than the left, although it's always a continuing responsibility between both parties to maintain civility. At certain times, because of certain circumstances, one party has more of a right to be righteously indignant, and one party has less of a right and then more of a duty to maintain temperature control.
I see. I just totally disagree. I think that this would be much smoother if we had some bipartisan help on this one. For example, the problem with January 6th is that, like, well, we tried that. Like, I don't know. It wasn't that long ago, right? But Biden and the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats, they tried to bend over backwards to make the condemnation of January 6th as bipartisan as possible, and the Republicans refused. And I think that that's a fucking problem, don't we think? Right? Like as a matter of fact, some of them defended their actions, and it doesn't, and not just that. Okay, so when the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer happened, they said that it was an FBI entrapment plot, right? Like they constantly minimize, justify, or glorify the violence on their own side, and it's a fucking problem. And I think that the only guy that can help us minimize that is Trump. I'll give you another example. Nancy Pelosi's husband is beaten in their own home by a crazy fucking person with a hammer. He gets sent to the fucking hospital, and Trump's son posts a picture of a Halloween costume, and it's a pair of underwear and a hammer, making a joke about the Speaker of the House's husband being having an attempted murder, and Trump retweets it. And how is that
Yeah.
not a fucking problem, right? And even just today, so if you remember, we covered it. The Minnesota Speaker of the House, the state Speaker of the House, I should say, and a state senator were killed, right, and their partners, and that's basic right wing violence, right? The dude, there's no like this one is solved, all right. We are well aware of what this one was, and Trump today said he wasn't even aware of it. He said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, this happened less than a year ago. Like we covered it on this podcast. And he didn't condemn it then, right? So let me ask you this, Darren. When are we expecting Trump to turn down to complete his moral duty and turn down the temperature? Is it going to be whenever a left winger is going to have to get killed? Do we just have to wait until a left winger gets killed and then it becomes Trump's moral duty, or can we count on him now to be the president and be bigger than himself and say, "Hey, God knows I'm as much of a contributor to this as anybody, but we got to fix the shit and fly right, otherwise this is going to get way worse."
Well, look again. I will freely admit Trump is not a gracious or a responsible actor by any means. But that doesn't negate the fact that I do believe he does have the right to some righteous indignation in this specific circumstance. And that's just kind of where I stand because he's victim adjacent. Yeah, I mean, again, I obviously don't want things to escalate. However,
Don't you?
there must be some kind of government-led reprisal, and I say that in a way just to reduce tensions. The right needs to have a victory now. So whether that be going after some left-wing organizations, even if they're being unfairly caught in the crossfire, going after the ADL, even though I doubt he'll do it, or even maybe the Soros,
How
type
does that get us any
foundations.
better? How is that going to solve the problem?
I think it'll placate the right. I think it'll placate the right to have a symbolic victory without any bloodshed. Maybe you do. Trump floated the idea of bringing RICO charges to the Soros family. I think that would be a good way to reduce tensions by gaining a symbolic victory.
But
I think
ultimately, that doesn't. What's your positioning, right? Doesn't get us any better off, right? You're essentially just trying to bluff the right wing base so that way they, take one of his bullshit wins, and then ultimately nothing fundamental changes, and then we just wait until it happens again. Like nothing you're proposing is gonna like stop this from happening again, calm things down. Like it's not really a solution, right? You're basically just saying like, sit on our hands, right? Like
well. I beg to differ. I think it is uh, a short-term solution that if tensions continue to escalate or not de-escalate afterwards could prove to be a long-term solution. So obviously, I don't want any more bloodshed. That would be categorically wrong and bad. So how do we placate the right, giving them another symbolic victory without spilling blood? Well, I actually think the RICO charges against George Soros and family are actually great. just prior to the well, just prior to the killing of Charlie Kirk was the much publicized killing of that Ukrainian girl, Irina Zarutska. And there was a 14-time convicted uh, or a felon roaming the streets that killed her that had been in jail 14 different times, but was let go uh, with basically a slap on the wrist each time because of leftist DAs. I don't know if the particular DA was Soros backed in this instance, but nevertheless, I do know George Soros does back these kinds of DAs in all kinds of cities, such as like San Francisco and New York. So if you were able to put George Soros and maybe even his son in jail for a time, which I think is totally justified based on what havoc they have wreaked on this country indirectly. Uh, yeah, I think that would be a great symbolic victory for the right. It would
Symbolic,
placate
it's
the right.
retribution. It's pure vengeance on something that was totally irrelevant to this matter. And you're saying, well, this is the only way forward, guys. Like, what the fuck, what the
Okay,
fuck's the matter with you?
the line between vengeance and justice is pretty much invisible, anyways. Justice is just vengeance outsourced to the state. So if Trump gets a
Oh,
little
that's real
symbolic
cute. Yeah,
victory,
that's real cute. Yeah.
well,
Uh-huh.
it's true. It's true. I mean, instead of going and acting out, instead of getting reprisal yourself, like say somebody kills your sister, instead of you going and killing them, you outsource your vengeance to the state. Hopefully, that person gets a life sentence or, perhaps even the death sentence. And then, it won't make up for the fact that your sister was killed, but it will at least placate you enough to where you won't do something rash. Uh, in a world without justice, that's when we get vigilantism. So if somebody were to kill your sister and the government did nothing, well, chances are you or one of your family members are going to go take matters into their own hands. So, what I'm calling for is some government reprisal without bloodshed, but a symbolic victory that will placate the right and keep them from doing anything rash, such as taking matters into their own hands and getting ahead or collecting a
Wait, but
scalp for themselves.
But wait a second. So you're saying that this dude behind bars, get Tyler Robinson, right, the shooter, having him
Mm-hmm.
behind bars for the rest of his life, or potentially get the death penalty. You're saying that that's not justice, right? That's nothing. That's not going to reprise the right, right? You're saying we have to go after George Soros, who had nothing to fucking do with this, not a fucking thing, and we have to put him behind bars on RICO charges, which are never gonna stick, and you know that, for a fucking fact, and you also know that it has nothing to do with this case. And you're saying, "Oh, this is the only thing we can do." How? And you're saying, "Well, that's justice. That's just vengeance outsourced to the state." No, vengeance outsourced to the state is somebody kills your sister, you turn him into the state. The state prosecutes that guy. Justice is served. What would be vengeance is if the governor of the state had a personal vendetta against a billionaire who was funding the Democrats, and you were like, "Oh, well, in order to appease the angry mob outside, I guess we're gonna have to imprison my political opponent." Right? I mean, you're smart enough to know that like what you just said was pure sophistry. I mean, it's just total nonsense, and it's only going to make us worse, right? Like this is not going to make us better. And I'm
I
also not sure it would please the right either. Like I'm not entirely convinced of that.
I don't know. I don't think it's sophistry. No, I truly, because obviously we are going to get justice in the sense that Tyler Robinson is certainly going to get a life sentence, if not the death penalty.
Hmm.
So justice in that sense will be served. However, uh, Charlie's life was infinitely more meaningful than Tyler Robinson's in the minds of the American public, especially on the right wing. He was a ubiquitous conservative influencer. Uh, Everybody knew him. Tons of people loved him. The amount of people he touched in this life are far greater than the amount of people that even knew Tyler Robinson until the events of the last week. In that sense, merely getting justice in this case, in terms of punishing Tyler Robinson, will not be enough to placate the right. I do think that we need to go into the realm of symbols and give the right a symbolic victory greater than the punishment of Tyler Robinson. And I think the best way to do that, you know, I don't know it, obviously, can you get George Soros on RICO charges? That is dubious. But if you could find a similar thing to do to placate the masses, yeah, I think that would be for the best. These mass firings, I think this is ultimately a healthy outlet for the right. I think it's reducing tensions. Truly, I do.
No, no, on
Because
that we agree a little bit, right? I mean, I feel like we've discussed that, but you don't think that it would be better if Trump, of all people, Donald Trump, right, were to try to do his best to lower the temperature? You don't think that that would be fruitful? You don't think that that would placate the right?
I think it would enrage the right if they didn't feel like, because they're all, okay. Let's take this. They're already mad at Trump somewhat. Obviously the cultists aren't, but a lot of people are getting mad at Trump because of the Epstein files, among other things. Tariffs are not shaking out to what they were promised to be.
Sure.
Uh, so right now his base is not happy with him, and I think a significant portion of the right would not be placated with just justice being dispensed against Tyler Robinson. I really think in order to reduce tensions, they need to see that they have a champion in the White House fighting for them, quote unquote, and they need a symbolic victory, just as the slaying of Charlie Kirk was a symbolic victory for the left. So,
So
I'm not
listen,
calling for bloodshed, but
the morbid part of me agrees with you. The Machiavellian in me says that, like, in the name of pure political advantage, the best thing for Trump to do is what? Turn this opportunity into a potential win. I mean, that seems to be his plan. Like, I don't know if you listen to his speech, but he seems to think that the best way for him to capitalize on this is to go after NGOs, Soros types, like you're saying, although he didn't mention Soros specifically in the speech, but those types of people, right?
mhm.
And from a pure political power standpoint, I can understand that, but I mean, man, being president can't just always be about maintaining and gaining political advantage. It just can't, right? That's how we got here. All right, we got here that way, right? Not I'm trying to figure out ways to get us out of here, and I don't think I don't. I just don't buy it. I'll let you go ahead and finish your thoughts, but I cannot believe that that's the best we can come up with. Are you kidding me? Like,
Well, I will admit it certainly sounds incredibly cynical, but I just try to apply like the logic of warfare to the logic of, because this is kind of like, it's not outright warfare, but it's symbolic warfare. So like when Iran, as a reprisal, after Israel had its 6 day war, Iran sent a few missiles over to the American base in Qatar. We shot down all the missiles heading towards the airbase, and we evacuated the airbase beforehand. It was, totally projected out, but in a way that was, a symbolic strike against us, and it did serve to appease the Iranian people who demanded reprisal in the moment. So even though it killed no Americans, it was enough to sate the Iranian public. In the same way, I don't call for bloodshed, but I do call for Trump to gain a symbolic victory to placate the more radical elements within his base. And then from there, I think we can have an off ramp.
Okay. That's unbelievable. Your golden plan is we have to dupe our base into taking a symbolic victory. All right. Well,
Yeah. Hey,
yeah,
that's why
this
they call it, that's why we call it the political playbook. This is the playbook we're running. I'm giving free advice to the Trump administration right now.
that is a fair point. That is a fair point. Well, okay. And I'll end it with this. As far I know, shit talked a lot on Trump, or at least I did, and his behavior and how it's totally reprehensible. Um, the left has been totally reprehensible as well. I mean, Destiny, for example, he has been just totally degenerate during all of this. So we have to basically tone police and police our own side because I mean, engaging in this, like it or not, every single side has contributed to Charlie Kirk getting shot. Not just the left, not just the right, all sides. Trump, other politicians, right wing media figures, left wing media figures, all of them contributed to this assassination. Like it or not, that's just the facts of the case. I do think that the only way that we're going to get better from that is if all sides kind of come together in an almost impossible task and be like, hey, passion is okay, anger is okay, energy is okay, violence is a non starter on all sides. And I think that that would go a long way, especially, you know, whether it's, whatever leaders you have in a community, whether it's pastors, mainstream media figures, influencers, politicians, you know, if you're, a local sheriff, I think that would be really interesting if you condemned all this. But I don't know. I don't see this getting a whole lot better because I understand that it's an impossible task. So I think it's got to get better before it gets worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. There's probably, uh, you know, the rhetoric might heat up a little before it simmers back down, but ultimately, I think it will simmer back down. In a month or two. Hopefully, I don't eat crow, but I think people will have basically moved on, even though they'll still hold a bit of a grudge over it. Um, but I don't think we're on the brink of civil war here or anything. Our political difference. The killing of Charlie Kirk is not in itself enough to bring us to that point. So yeah, hopefully physical reprisals don't continue. Uh, hopefully that off ramp I was speaking about can be reached after a symbolic victory on the right.